VSH double T.
Good evening. What was the last topic? We discussed tissues. What about tissues we were discussing? Which part of tissues?
And we did simple permanent tissues.
Simple permanent tissues. Okay. The rest of the tissues over.
Yes.
And that's it. Tissues. And today we'll complete first of all with complex permanent. Complex permanent tissues. Complex permanent tissues. Now we start with this. What are complex permanent tissues? Tissues made up of two or more types of cells. Tissues made up of two or more types of cells. So that is complex permanent tissues. Okay. So when we are talking about tissues made up of two or more types of cells, so that is what we understand as permanent, complex permanent tissues. What are the types? First is xylem. What are the types of cells xylem is made up of? Xylem is made up of four types of elements. Xylem has got four types of elements. What are the four types of elements? Trachees, vessels, xylem, parenchyma, and xylem fibers. So see here, we have, yes, what happened?
Ma'am, we
Actually, we didn't do the protection tissues and
protective
stomata.
tissues, ma'am.
Did I finish the chapter? Did I finish the chapter? What am I teaching? Now, when we are talking about complex permanent tissues, we had already finished with simple permanent tissues the other day, and I already said if it is a concept of simple permanent tissues, you are supposed to remember that the tissues are made up of only one type of cells. Three types of tissues we learned the other day: parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. Their structure, location, function, that is what we finished last day. Today now, the next concept that we are going to study is complex permanent. What does that mean? When the cells or two or more types of cells, two or more types of cells are engaged in the formation of a type of a tissue, then such type of tissues will be considered as complex permanent. If you remember the definition of the word tissues, what is it? Group of cells similar or dissimilar in structure performing a common function. So far, in the concept of plant tissues, we were only talking about groups of cells similar in structure. We were talking about meristematic. If it is apical meristems, all of them of the same structure. Lateral meristems, all of them of the same structure. Intercalary meristems, all of them of the same structure. And then again, parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma, all of them of the same structure, individually. This is different. We are saying that all these four types of cells form one type of tissue. And what are they generally concerned with? They are generally concerned with conduction of the water and the minerals. So if I have to understand trachees and vessels, these two types of cells, these are called cells of the xylem. These are the cells of the xylem, also known as the elements of the xylem. cells of the xylem, also known as elements of xylem. So now that we are talking about the cells of xylem or elements of xylem, what I have to write? What are their basic functions? These two types of cells are majorly engaged in the process of conduction of water and minerals. So we will write what is their function. Conduction of passage. Conduction means passage. Conduction of water and minerals. What is the function of xylem parenchyma? The function of xylem parenchyma is storage. Storage of starch. Xylem parenchyma is majorly engaged in the process of storage of starch. And xylem fibers, if I have to understand what is the basic function of the fibers, fibers basically give mechanical strength support. Mechanical strength. So that is the function of xylem fibers. But whenever you are supposed to write down, what is the function of xylem? Xylem is a type of a vascular tissue. It is also known as the vascular tissue. So what is the common function of xylem that you should always remember? Common function of xylem is the conduction of water and minerals. Conduction of water and minerals from the soil to the upper parts of the plant. So that is actually the function of the xylem whenever we write. So conduction of water and minerals, which is a specific function of the tracheids and vessels, just now I wrote here. Tracheids and vessels majorly engage in the process of conduction of water and minerals. And overall also, whenever you are asked to write down the function of xylem, that is what you are supposed to write. So again, remember, xylem, a type of tissue present in the plant. And what are these type of tissues basically engaged in? Continuous transport of the water and the minerals from the soil to the upper parts of the plant. If I have to understand that where are these type of tissues present, let me just talk about a plant here. Now this is my plant. And I understand these are the upper parts of the plant. So now in this case, whenever we have to talk about the position of the xylem, now the xylem is more or less placed in the center, the central region of the stem, the central region of the root, and also more or less in the central region of the leaf. So this tubular arrangement of cells, the cells may be of different shape, but ultimately they are all engaged this way. Let's say suppose I may say that this is one cell known as a tracheid, then the vessels and then the fibers arranged this way, and then so ultimately the shape and structure of the four types of cells are different, but they are all together placed, resulting in the formation of a tubular structure in the central region of the stem leaf. And what are they doing overall? What are they doing? They are engaged in the upward movement of the water and sap. I talk about the second type of complex tissue. What it is? The second type of complex tissue is known as phloem. The second type of complex tissue is known as phloem. The same here, phloem is made up of four types of elements seen like this. What are the names? The names are companion cells. Companion cells. Number 2 is sieve tubes. Sieve tubes. What is next? Phloem parenchyma. Phloem parenchyma. And what is fourth? Phloem fibers. So these are the four types of cells which are present in the phloem, which makes up the phloem. But again, when I talk about what is the primary function of what is the function of the phloem and what are the prominent cells that the phloem has? Phloem has these two as the prominent cells, companion cells and sieve tubes. Companion cells, sieve tubes are the prominent cells, most important group of cells. And what are they generally concerned with? They are concerned with the conduction of passage, conduction of the soluble food. Conduction of the soluble food, and otherwise, if I have to talk about parenchyma, again, more or less the same function. Parenchyma helps in the process of storage. Parenchyma helps in the process of storage, and fibers are majorly associated with the protection and support functions. So this is what we are now talking about, that the phloem. Phloem has majorly the companion cells. Overall again, write down the function of phloem. If that is a question, what are you supposed to write down as a function of phloem? Function of phloem again the same thing. Conduction of soluble food.
Should we write this?
Conduction of soluble food. Conduction of the soluble food. This you write or you may not write. If you want to write, the same thing is there in your volume also. Just understand. So function is conduction of the soluble food. Now next is, whenever we now talk about in your exam you get questions. What are the conducting tissues? Name the conducting tissues. What are you supposed to write down? Name the conducting tissues. Xylem and phloem. What type of functions do they perform? Xylem is concerned with the conduction of water minerals. Phloem is concerned with the conduction of the soluble food. Now, where is the soluble food being formed? I said that if this is the xylem, I write X. This is the xylem. I already told you that this the group of cells will result in the formation of a tubular arrangement all throughout, and running from the root and the stem and the leaf and the upper part of the plant, all covered. So this, yes, the group of cells resulting in the formation of a tubular arrangement and then the formation of the food here. Later, I understand that this xylem is constantly engaged in the passage of the water. Now the water has to be delivered to some other group of cells, no? Say suppose now I say that these are one of those leaf cells. These are the leaf cells. So now the water has to be moved, the water has to move into the leaf cells. So as the water would move into the leaf cells, what is happening in the leaf cells? The process of photosynthesis. So I now understand that in one of those cells, what is happening? The process of photosynthesis and glucose molecules get formed. So these conducting tissues are taking water, delivering water to all the plant cells. The plant cells are gathering that water and with the help of other components like sunlight and chlorophyll and carbon dioxide. So the plant cells are now ready for the process of photosynthesis. So after the process of photosynthesis, what are they making? Glucose molecules. But these glucose molecule, whatever is present, whatever is formed in these plant cells, this glucose molecule, whatever are formed in these plant cells, will they remain in these cells as it is? No, immediately they start getting distributed. In one cell, the glucose has been formed by the process of photosynthesis. In one cell of the leaf. Now when I say one cell of the leaf, it is not only one cell of the leaf. That means the cells of the leaf undergo. The cells of the leaf undergo the process of photosynthesis. So now all the cells of the leaf, wherever we come across, all the cells of the leaf will undergo the process of photosynthesis. So now if I understand that these are the cells of the leaf, all of them are undergoing the process of photosynthesis and the glucose is getting formed. One of the question is, what will happen to this glucose molecule after some time? These glucose molecules will start the process of migration, movement. They will go to the nearby cells sideways. They will go to the cells upwards. They will go to the cells downwards. They will come to the cells downwards. And ultimately, they will try to again enter into another set of tubes. And what are these set of tubes called? I write P for phloem. So the concept is that whenever we are talking about the xylem tissues, which are constantly taking the water and the minerals from the soil to the upper parts of the plant. Now in the upper parts of the plant, which part of the plant we are mostly interested in? The cells of the leaves, where the process of photosynthesis happens and then the food is formed. Food meaning here glucose. And after that, this glucose will not be stationary, but they are constantly moving, and they will start moving in all directions. So what is the difference? The movement of the xylem is only one direction, upwards, soil towards leaf. But what about the phloem? The movement of the phloem is in all directions. the movement of the food by the phloem is in all directions. It can go upwards also from a leaf cell. It can go sideways also from a leaf cell. It can grow downwards also from a leaf cell. So the movement is all direction if I have to talk about phloem. But for xylem, no, only upwards. Only upwards. So this is what about the permanent tissues. So for compound, complex permanent tissues you are supposed to understand. What else about the plant tissues you are supposed to come across? Some specialized type of tissues now that we talk about. Let us talk about one known as protective tissues. Two groups of tissues we study here, protective tissues. What about protective tissues we learn here? One is known as epidermis. Epidermis. Say suppose I talk about the leaf. This is one plant. And this plant has got a large number of leaves. Now, what happened? Now, these leaves, try to look into a section of the leaf. Say suppose I try to look into one section of the leaf to find out how would this appear. I want to look into the section of the leaf here. And in the section of the leaf, I come across that the arrangement of the cells are something like this. One lining of cells, then some more tall cells like this, then some other shapes of cells this way, and then another layer of cells here. So here, when I talk about that the section of the leaf, when magnified, meaning a small portion of the leaf, take a section and then magnify, you get to see that a leaf which appears to us to be very thin, no? Whenever I talk about especially the small leaves, appears to us that it is so thin. But if a section can be made out of it, yes, we get to see that it is multi-layered cells. It has got multi-layered cells, so many layers of cells it has got. But right now we are only interested about the word epidermis. Which one is epidermis? Epidermis is the first layer of cell. The uppermost and the lowermost. So the uppermost and the lowermost, these are epidermal cells, epidermis. So I would say this is the upper epidermis, lower epidermis. So any leaf would have two layers of epidermis, the upper epidermis and the lower epidermis. Understood? Now, from this epidermis or from this epidermal cells, something starts getting formed. Now, what is getting formed here? Let me try understanding. That these epidermal cells, they start releasing a waxy substance. This epidermal layer, they start producing some waxy substance here on the upper layer. On the upper layer, they are thicker, and in the lower layer, very thin it is. The release of these substances, what are these substances called? Now, these waxy substance is what is known as the cuticle. What is cuticle? Cuticle is the waxy coat. The waxy substance released by the epidermis.
Where is the cuticle?
Released by the epidermis. Now, the cuticle is just above the epidermal layer. Just above the epidermis. Are we able to see that very definitely in a particular leaf? Yes, in certain leaves, if I talk about the mango, and if I compare the tulsi leaves, all of you had seen this, very common leaves. So if I talk about the mango leaves, the upper surface, and the tulsi leaves, the upper surface, can you tell me what the difference is? Did anybody notice? Very good. The tulsi leaves, which are small, but if you see the upper surface, it's not shiny at all. Is it shiny? No, it's not shiny. And more or less it is a bit rough also. It is hairy also. But if I talk about the mango leaves, all of you must have noticed, no? Though the leaves are narrow, but the upper surface of the leaves are smooth and it is quite shiny. No? It is dark green and quite shiny, and when it is bright sunshine And if you happen to observe some of these plants, you see this, you will feel that as if these leaves are no emitting lights because the sunlight falls on them, and the leaves appear even more bright in color and they appear even more shiny. Why does that happen? These leaves have got a thick coat of cuticle, the waxy substance released by the epidermis. So, वैसे तो अभी if I have to understand that, are these leaves interested in making them attractive and waxy like that? Is it their significance that they want to make themselves shiny? No, they don't want to make themselves shiny, but only because they have got an adequate amount of the epidermal cuticle, the epidermal waxy coat. These leaves, which have a large amount of waxy coat, waxy substance, enjoy some benefit. What are those benefits? The benefits are, when we talk about the mango leaves, in this hot summer days also, like today also, afternoon was very hot, temperature was quite high, intensity of sunlight was quite high. So when we talk about that, yes, intensity of sunlight was quite high, and in the entire month of May, when almost all afternoons were something like this, high temperature, bright sunshine. But did we ever see that the mango leaves have been wrinkling and wilting? No, we never saw mango leaves behaving that way. But did we see our tulsi leaves becoming dried out and wrinkling in the afternoon? Yes, very often. So why that? Because the tulsi leaves and many such leaves like them, which have got a thin coat of cuticle, prevents much lesser water loss. Meaning, when I talk about the mango leaves, since they have got a thicker coat of cuticle, the water loss is very less. The thick coat of wax or the thick waxy coat prevents the water loss. So the plant cells have got adequate amount of water intact in them. And that's the reason, even if it is bright sunshine, the mango leaves have never wilted or wrinkled. But smaller leaves and leaves which do not have too much of waxy substance on their outer surface, what was the problem that they had suffered? Enormous loss of water. Where the temperature is high, the loss of water is enormous. And since the loss of water is enormous, so now what? If the loss of water is enormous, immediately, after a few more hours, they start the process of wilting, drying up. Then what I'm going to write down as a function of epidermis. Epidermis releases a waxy substance, waxy coat known as cuticle. What are the functions? The most important function is it prevents the loss of water. So if I have to write down some important functions of the epidermal layer, the first point you write, the epidermal releases a waxy coat known as the cuticle. So this itself is your first point. And what is the second point that you will write? It prevents evaporation from the surface of the leaf. Prevents evaporation from the leaf surfaces. So if the process of evaporation is comparatively lesser, then is it the plant in a beneficial situation? Yes, it is. Let us now talk about the second type of tissues. The second type of tissues are known as the bark, also known as the cambium. Now, whenever we are talking about the bark, which part of the plant are we talking about? Now, say suppose again I look into that this is a plant, well-developed stem. So this particular region is what we talk about as the bark. So this is the bark of the plant. It's not so. This is the bark of the plant. What is the bark? What type of tissue it is bark? What type of tissue is the bark of the stem? Last class you were there.
Bark.
What type of tissue is the bark of the stem? We had studied already last class.
Systematic.
What type of tissue is the bark of the stem? Sclerentine. We had written also examples, locations. The seed coat and the covering of the the veins of the leaflet, the bark of the stem, root. So sclerenchyma is always a harder tissue. Sclerenchyma is always the dead tissues. So now that we are talking about the bark of the stem, what type of tissues? Again, we are talking about, they are sclerenchyma in nature. So if I talk about the bark, yes, made of sclerenchyma, made up of sclerenchymatous tissues, of course. If they are made up of sclerenchymatous tissues, should they be living or dead type of tissues? They are all dead tissues. No, they are all dead tissues. And the cell wall is made up of what? The cell wall is made up of lignin. So all these features would remain exactly the same that we had studied for sclerenchyma. But something more we try understanding is that whenever we look into, say suppose now if I try drawing the bark tissue, something like this, that the bark, the entire plant, generally get to see that it is having some openings, or the bark, when you look into the entire plant, little bit magnified. You magnify this region to see how does it appear, one surface. It is something like the outer lining of the stem is in pieces, as if. The outer lining of the stem is as if in pieces. But apparently it appears that it's a continuous covering. But go very close to the tree, big plants especially, which has got a well-established trunk. When you go closer, did you ever notice that the outer surface is very smooth, is it? Is it very smooth? No, it's never smooth. It's all the outer woody surface and broken, no, as if they are all joined together, put together. So this is what I draw here, as if the outer surface of the stem is all this way. And they are constantly releasing certain substances. They are constantly, the cells of these bark, they are constantly releasing certain substances. And what are these substances called? These substances are called suberin. These substances are called suberin. The bark of the stem, or even the well-developed big plants have got roots also, which have got bark. They release suberin. Again, what is suberin? Suberin is also comparatively a waxy substance. Suberin also is a comparatively waxy substance, and it prevents the entry. So that's the first function. Prevents entry of unwanted substances or unwanted pathogens, unwanted germs, pathogens, or substances. That is one function of the suberin. You remember what is the second function of suberin? The second function of the bark or the suberin is prevents water loss. This also prevents water loss by evaporation. Prevents water loss by evaporation. So what are the two major functions of the bark that you write? The bark, a type of a protective tissue, of course, it does not allow the entry of unwanted substances, pathogens, mites, ticks, fleas, so many different type of organisms may enter the inner region of the plant tissues. No, but they cannot. Because even though the bark is not a continuous cover and it is broken, but those gaps are as if sealed with those waxy substances. Something like, we have got numerous hair follicles and sweat pores, no? But do we understand that through these sweat pores, a large number of germs can enter? Can large number of germs and small these ants and all these smaller organs, can they enter through these small sweat pores and these hair follicles that we have? No, because most of them, they are, or majority of them, except for few maybe, majority of them are always filled with certain type of oily substances in our skin. So that oily substances is blocking the pathway, not allowing unnecessary substances to enter. Protection. So same is the concept of the bark. Understand it? So this is the second protective tissue that you have to understand, and the third is the stomata that we have to write. What is stomata? Now same again here, now that I am drawing the epidermis, Now that I am drawing the epidermis, in this case, say suppose, I may draw the specialized structure, something like this. Now, when I'm talking about the epidermis, the upper, lower, especially now I try to understand what is so special about the lower epidermis. What is so special about the lower epidermis? The lower epidermis has got numerous pores, numerous small pores. कभी बुक गिरेगा, कभी तुम गिरोगे, ये क्या है?
नहीं मैं भूख गिरने वाला था.
So now when we are talking about what are stomata, what is stomata? On the lower surface of a leaf, majorly, if we happen to put them under the microscope and if we see, we'll be able to see that there are numerous pores. And through these pores, actually, many substances can come out from the surface of the leaf, or many substances can enter. So if I have to say that what are some of the substances that can enter, I would write yes, carbon dioxide majorly enters through these pore-like structures. A lot of water in the form of water vapor also can enter. What does come out? Oxygen comes out. Water vapor also comes out. Water in the form of vapor also comes out. So, and now that we are talking about that this stomata plays a major function whenever we are talking about the working of a plant, function of a plant. So in this case, we are trying to come across that these small pores which are there on the lower surface of the plants, on the lower epidermis of the plants, are what are known as the stomata. What are they made up of? They have got two bean-shaped cells. Now let me draw the stomata in detail a little bit. So this is how a stomata would generally appear. What are these bean-shaped cells known as? These are known as the guard cells. Bean-shaped cells are known as guard cells. And if it is a plant cell, what else should I draw inside this cell? Of course, a cell one. But I said if it is a plant cell, it should be having a big vacuole. It should be having a single nucleus, and yes, cytoplasm, of course. And this is a specialized cell which also undergoes the process of photosynthesis. So yes, chloroplast also should be there. So what are some of the common parts that you should remember? This is the vacuole, it is a plant cell, we know. This is a chloroplast, this is the chloroplast. Then what else? It has got a single nucleus and the stomatal opening. This is known as the stomatal opening. The stomatal opening is also known as the stoma. So now these type of structures are present on the lower surface of the plant in huge numbers, millions. Are they not there on the upper surface of the leaf? Much lesser. On the upper surface of the leaf also they are there, but much lesser. Something like, if I talk about in one small area in the upper surface, there are some 50 of them. Then in the lower surface, in that same area, there may be something around 200 or 300. In the lower surface, they are in millions. Upper surface, much lesser.
So is the stomata semi-permeable?
No. Stomata cannot be semi-permeable. A stomata is not a membrane that it has to be semi-permeable. Membranes can be permeable or semi-permeable. But here we are just talking about an opening. Stomata is an opening. So it is not allowing the process of osmosis at all. It is only allowing the process of diffusion. Now that I explaining that water can enter, carbon dioxide can enter, oxygen can come out. It is only by the process of diffusion. Only by the process of diffusion, and diffusion does not need any membranes. So now that we are talking about stomata, what is stomata? And what are some of the important functions? So two important functions of stomata, what will you write down? What are the two important functions of stomata? Diffusion of water. Diffusion of water in the form of vapor. So that is stomata, diffusion of water in the form of vapor. That is a most important function or one of the most important functions that the plant performs, and that is what is known as transpiration. The plant is constantly giving away water. The leaves are constantly giving away water in the form of water vapor. That is why there is an adequate amount of moisture in the air. Otherwise, the air would have been always dry. So that is what we are now talking about as for transpiration. So this is one important function of the stomata. What is the other function of the stomata? Takes in carbon dioxide or exchange of gases. Taking in of carbon dioxide, giving away of oxygen by a process known as photosynthesis and respiration. Both we are talking about. So now if I talk about exchange of gases. Exchange of gases. So here I will talk about the concept of photorespiration, where again we understand the carbon dioxide that it takes in is also responsible for the process of photosynthesis, and oxygen is given away by the process of photosynthesis as a byproduct. So now when we are talking about what is happening in the concept of, or what are we supposed to remember as a concept of protective tissue, so this is what we will write. But after take 5 questions that you will answer. Answers are all here, and based on this, you will, if you have understood, you will try writing out those 5 answers very fast. Number 1. Fataфат. Abhi 1 minute here. Why are you so late?
I was just trying to. I was just trying to.
5 minutes late. Yeah. Okay, the volume also, let's see volume question. Did we solve the other day? No. We did not solve the volume. Let us try solving some volume questions. Also, there are many questions there. Some of the next questions are solved. So that we can. Animal tissues we haven't started at all, no? We haven't started at all. Okay, you write because in the volume it's all together. After you finish the chapter, you can try. I'll give you some more. Now you can write down the questions that I'm giving you part by part, and later when you try solving the questions of the volume, quite a number of them may be repetitions, so that becomes a practice game for you. Number one. Name the protective tissue. Name the protective tissue of the plant. Name the protective tissue of the plant. Name the protective tissue of the plant that produces. Name the protective tissue of the plant that produces cuticle. Name the protective tissue of the plant that produces cuticle, full stop. State 1 or mention 2 functions. Mention, same question. Mention 2 functions of the same. Mention 2 functions of the same. Of the cuticle. Mention 2 functions of the same meaning of the cuticle. आया समझ में? Keep 4 lines for your answer. 4 lines, इससे ज़्यादा आंसर लंबा होना ही नहीं चाहिए. 4 to 5 lines maximum. You write down the functions in 2 points and only 1 word. No, that is the 2 type part of the answer. Number 2. Question number 2. Question number 2. Name the conducting tissues of a plant. Name the conducting tissues of a plant. Name the conducting tissues of a plant. 1 line for the answer. Number 3. Question number 3. Name the type of, or name the cells which make up the stomata. Question number 3. Name the cells which make up the stomata. Name the cells that make up the stomata. Next question, number 4.
How many lines?
Cells, only 2-word answer it is. Only 2-word answer. Next, number 4. Name the xylem elements. Name the xylem elements. Name the xylem elements that bring about.
Random and
Elements. They are also called elements. 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 Elements.
elements.
Elements.
Elements.
The pronunciation is not elements. It's not ELI. Elements. ELEMENTS. Name the xylem elements that bring about long distance. Name the xylem elements that bring about long distance conduction. That bring about long distance conduction of water and minerals. That bring about long distance conduction of water and minerals. Next,
Water and
minerals. Water and
distance.
conduction of water and minerals. Last question. Last question.
Ma'am, we have already given 5 questions.
I gave you 5.
no ma'am, 4.
No, you gave us 4.
Acha. Even if it is 5, write one more. This is important.
4 है.
Write one more.
अरे खिला के बोला.
Next is the stomata performs essential functions, or stomata performs essential processes. Don't write functions, write processes. Stomata performs essential processes such as photosynthesis and respiration. Full stop. Full stop. Justify. चलो फटाफट आंसर करो.
आंसर लिखना.
लिखना नहीं है मतलब. चलो as much as you can. The last question, I'll give you the answer. वो लिख लो, and after that whatever time you have, you'll finish the rest of the questions. If not, you'll continue it as homework. Last answer complete करो. The stomata has. Never mind, 2 minutes. Stomata has guard cells. Stomata has guard cells which are rich in chloroplast. Which are rich in chloroplast. Comma. Hence, they carry out photosynthesis. Full stop. Also, next line. Also, they utilize oxygen. Photosynthesis के बाद full stop. Also, they utilize oxygen and break down food to release energy and carbon dioxide. to release energy and carbon dioxide, comma, a small amount of carbon dioxide diffuses out. Small amount of carbon dioxide diffuses out through the stomatal opening. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
The rest of the questions you will be able to do. Complete that as homework.
That's all किया ना. अरे आई मेरे को बेल बज गई मैं देख रहा हूँ अरे भाई तो हाँ हाँ बोल रहा है देखो नहीं काम को सिर्फ 5 मिनट मिलते हैं भाई किसी कोई मुझे आया था पूरा अच्छा इसने तो मैंने तो पूरा लिखा था मैंने तो पूरा लिख ये तुम लोग का ले वाला वो भाई बता ना वाला
तेरा वाला क्या कितना लेट है
Yes,
Yeah, practice.
कॉल उठा दो कॉल